Mexico is a land of beauty and color, but when darkness falls, it becomes a place where shadows breathe and whispers follow you through the night. Every street, every ruin, every church carries memories that refuse to rest. Ghosts linger here, tied to stories older than time, stories soaked in blood, sorrow, and mystery. By day you see vibrant markets, ancient pyramids, and cities alive with music, but by night the atmosphere shifts. The air grows heavy, the silence stretches, and a chill runs through you as if unseen eyes are watching. Mexico is more than history and tradition. It is a land where the dead walk beside the living. Legends speak of restless soldiers marching through old battlefields, of weeping mothers wandering canals in eternal grief, of cursed convents where the cries of tortured souls echo in the stone walls. These are not just stories told around campfires, they are warnings whispered through generations, reminders that the past is never truly gone. From the canals of Xochimilco where dolls hang lifeless and decaying, to the grand haciendas where shadows move on their own, to the lonely roads where phantom hitchhikers vanish without a trace, Mexico is filled with places that blur the line between this world and the next. Tonight you will step into that darkness, you will hear the terrifying tales of the most haunted places in Mexico, you will walk down cursed streets, wander through haunted forests, and enter buildings that breathe with the energy of those who never left. For the next 2 hours you are not just a listener, you are a traveler crossing into the unknown, and once you step in there is no turning back. Haunted place number 1. La Isla de las Muñecas, Xochimilco. There is a place in Mexico that feels like a nightmare brought to life, a place where the air itself seems to whisper secrets that you were never meant to hear. Hidden deep within the canals of Xochimilco south of Mexico City lies La Isla de las Muñecas, the island of the dolls. By day it appears strange and unsettling. By night it becomes something else entirely, a place where shadows stretch unnaturally, where the sound of water lapping against the boat feels like a heartbeat, and where hundreds of empty eyes watch you without blinking. The story begins in the 1950s with a man named Don Julian Santana Barrera. Don Julian was a recluse, a man who abandoned his family and moved to a small isolated island in the Chinampas of Xochimilco. He wanted peace and solitude, a place to live quietly away from the noise of the world. But what he found was not peace. What he found was death. One afternoon as he worked along the water's edge, Don Julian claimed to have discovered the body of a little girl who had drowned in the canal. No one knows who she was or how she came to be there, but for Don Julian that moment changed everything. Days later, a doll floated down the canal, its body bloated with water, its glass eyes staring blankly upward. Believing it belonged to the dead girl, Don Julian pulled it from the water and hung it in a tree, hoping it would honor her spirit and give her some kind of peace. But peace never came. Don Julian began to hear things in the night. Whispers threading through the air like invisible fingers. The sound of small footsteps pattering on the wet soil. A girl's laughter echoing just out of sight, followed by sudden hollow sobbing. Shadows shifted where they should not. Sometimes he swore he saw her, the drowned girl, standing at the water's edge with her head tilted down, her dripping hair covering her face. Terrified, Don Julian continued collecting dolls. He believed the spirit of the girl was restless and the dolls would protect him. At first it was 1 or 2, then dozens, then hundreds. He scoured garbage dumps, traded food for broken toys, salvaged what the canals carried in. Every doll he found, no matter how ruined, he hung from the trees. Soon the island was covered. Dolls nailed to walls. Dolls tied to branches. Dolls hanging from wires, their limbs twisted unnaturally, their faces rotting in the sun. Some were headless. Some had one eye missing. Some had no arms and no legs. Their once colorful clothes had faded into moldy rags. And yet visitors swore the dolls were not lifeless. Their heads would turn. Their eyes would blink. Their lips would twitch as if forming words you could not quite hear. Locals began to avoid the island, calling it cursed. They said Don Julian had lost his mind. But those who dared visit told darker stories. A tourist claimed he felt a doll's tiny hand clutch his own. Another said he heard dozens of dolls whispering his name all at once. Some swore they saw the drowned girl herself, moving between the trees, her pale arms brushing against the hanging dolls as though she were leading them. And Don Julian, he only grew more obsessed. He spoke openly about the spirit of the girl. He said she lived on the island. That she watched him constantly. That she demanded more dolls. He told people the dolls whispered to him in the night, telling him to keep going, to never stop. And he obeyed. Year after year, until the island became a grotesque shrine of broken toys, decaying beneath the sun, staring silently with hundreds of hollow faces. The most chilling part of the tale is Don Julian's own death. In 2001, After nearly 50 years of dedicating his life to the dolls, Don Julian's body was discovered floating in the same canal where he once found the drowned girl. Locals whispered that the girl had finally claimed him. Others said the dolls themselves had grown tired of his service and they dragged him into the water. His family insisted it was a heart attack. But the locals believe differently. They believe he became just another spirit on the island, forever bound to the dolls he hung. Today the island of the dolls still stands. Visitors who arrive by boat say the atmosphere shifts the moment you step onto the shore. The silence is heavy, thick, pressing against your chest. The dolls are everywhere, nailed to trees, slumped on the ground, hanging above your head like vultures waiting to strike. Some swing in the wind, their glass eyes flashing as sunlight catches them. Others look wet, as though they have just crawled from the canal. Those who stay long enough swear the dolls move. Their eyes shift to follow you. Their arms sway not with the wind but with intent. Their lips part as if whispering. Some visitors bring their own dolls as offerings, hoping to appease the spirits. Others leave quickly, unable to stand the oppressive weight of being watched by hundreds of broken faces. And then there are those who hear it, the sound of a girl crying, faint at first, then louder, as though she is standing just behind you. Turn quickly, and you will see nothing but rows of dolls, their empty faces reflecting your own fear. But sometimes, just sometimes, visitors report catching a glimpse of her. The drowned girl. Her hair dripping, her eyes wide and glassy like the dolls around her, her mouth open in a scream that never makes a sound. Some say the dolls protect her. Others believe the dolls are her. Each one possessed, each one carrying a piece of her restless spirit. The truth is no one knows. What is certain is this: when you step onto La Isla de las Muñecas, you do not walk among the living. The dolls watch. The spirits wait. And the girl in the water never truly left. So if you ever travel the canals of Xochimilco, and your boatman points to a small island covered in hanging dolls, remember this. Those dolls are not just toys. They are eyes. They are guardians. They are graves. And once they have seen you, they never forget. Number 2, Hospital Juarez, Mexico City. There are places where suffering leaves a scar so deep that time itself cannot erase it. Hospital Juarez in Mexico City is one of those places. It stands tall and imposing, a building of stone and shadow, where thousands have passed through its halls searching for healing, and many never left. By day it is a hospital like any other, filled with doctors, patients, and the sound of medical machines. But when night falls it changes. The air becomes heavy, footsteps echo in deserted corridors, and those who walk its halls after dark whisper of things they cannot explain. The history of Hospital Juarez is drenched in tragedy. It is one of the oldest hospitals in Mexico, with roots stretching back to the 16th century. In its earliest years it was a place where epidemics raged through the city, leaving bodies stacked in rooms not meant for the dead. Cholera, smallpox, and typhus turned its wards into morgues. Soldiers wounded in battles during the revolution bled out on its floors, their cries of pain seeping into the very walls. Doctors performed crude surgeries with trembling hands, and the stench of blood and disinfectant mixed until no one could tell the difference. They say the spirits of those patients never moved on. One of the most famous ghosts is known simply as La Planchada, the Ironed Lady. She is described as a nurse, always appearing in a spotless uniform, perfectly pressed as though she stepped out of a dream rather than reality. Patients lying in their beds report waking in the middle of the night to find her standing over them. Sometimes she adjusts their sheets. Sometimes she checks their temperature. Sometimes she simply stares, her face calm, her eyes cold, her presence both comforting and terrifying. The strange part is this: patients swear they feel better after she visits. Their fever breaks. Their pain lessens. Yet when nurses check records, they discover that no one was ever assigned to their room. La Planchada is not alive. She has been dead for decades. The legend says she was once a real nurse, strict and devoted, but she failed one patient, and that mistake cost the patient's life. Overcome with guilt, she died broken-hearted. Now she wanders the hospital, cursed to serve forever, healing where she can, punishing with cold silence where she cannot. Doctors whisper her name. Patients fear her and yet long for her. And at night the staff sometimes hear the soft squeak of old leather shoes walking across the floor, even when the hallway is empty. But she is not alone. The hospital is filled with other restless spirits. Visitors report hearing cries of soldiers echoing through stairwells, the sound of men begging for water, the clatter of metal surgical tools hitting the ground when no operation is taking place. Shadows drift across walls, long and thin like skeletal fingers. Some patients claim they see an old priest kneeling at their bedside, whispering prayers in Latin, his hand raised as though offering a final blessing. When they blink, he is gone, and sometimes so is their life. Staff who work overnight shifts tell darker tales. They describe hearing gurneys rolling down corridors, wheels rattling only to find the hallway empty. Doors open by themselves, slamming shut with a force that rattles windows. Lights flicker, plunging entire wings into darkness, before surging back to life. In the morgue, the coldest and most dreaded part of the hospital, workers refuse to stay alone. They say drawers creak open by themselves, and shapes move beneath the white sheets even though the dead should not move at all. One nurse recalls walking past the maternity ward long after visiting hours. She heard a baby crying. The sound was sharp, high-pitched, and desperate. She rushed inside, expecting to find a newborn left alone. But the cribs were empty. The crying continued, echoing through the room, bouncing from wall to wall. She backed away slowly, her heart pounding, until the sound stopped as suddenly as it had begun. Others tell of an elevator that moves by itself, doors opening on floors where no one called it. Sometimes when the doors slide open, staff claim they see figures waiting inside. Not living patients, not doctors. Just shadows shaped like people, silent and still, staring until the doors close again. The most unsettling legend comes from the operating rooms. Surgeons have reported that in the middle of procedures, they feel a hand resting on their shoulder. Cold, firm, steady. They turn but no one is there. Some believe it is the spirit of doctors long gone, watching over the living, reminding them of the endless weight of responsibility. Others think it is a warning. In 1985, tragedy struck again when a devastating earthquake hit Mexico City. Hospital Juarez was nearly destroyed. Hundreds died within its walls as ceilings collapsed, crushing patients and staff. Rescue workers pulled bodies from rubble for days. Survivors swore they heard voices crying out from beneath the ruins long after everyone had been accounted for. Some even say they still hear those voices today, echoing beneath the rebuilt floors, trapped between life and death. Now, the hospital continues its work, but its past clings to it like a shroud. People who enter speak of the strange heaviness in the air, as if every breath carries the weight of centuries of suffering. The smell of antiseptic never seems strong enough to mask the odor of old blood that some swear lingers there. And every flicker of the fluorescent lights reminds you that something unseen is watching. If you visit Hospital Juarez after dark, walk slowly. Listen carefully. The halls may be empty, but you are not alone. You might catch a glimpse of La Planchada smoothing the sheets at a patient's bed. You might hear the cries of soldiers who died over 100 years ago. You might even feel the cold hand of a spirit surgeon guiding yours, reminding you that in this hospital, life and death are always closer than they appear. And when you leave, ask yourself this: are you stepping out of the hospital, or is the hospital stepping out with you, its ghosts following quietly into the night? Number 3. Palacio de Lecumberri, Mexico City. In the heart of Mexico City stands a building so infamous, its very walls seem to whisper of cruelty and despair. The Palacio de Lecumberri, once known as the Black Palace, was not a palace of grandeur or beauty, but of pain, blood, and broken souls. Today it houses the National Archives, its shelves filled with the history of a nation. But for decades it was a prison, and the ghosts of its past are said to remain trapped within its stone corridors. From the moment it opened in 1900, Lecumberri was a place of fear. Its design was cold and geometric, with wings stretching out like the spokes of a wheel, all watched from a central tower where guards could see every movement. Escape was impossible. Privacy did not exist. The prisoners lived under constant surveillance, caged like animals, stripped of hope. Some were hardened criminals, others were political prisoners, thinkers and writers who dared to speak against the government. In the Black Palace, all were treated the same. The punishment was severe. Men were beaten until their screams echoed through the halls. Food was scarce, disease was rampant, and the cold, damp air of the cells gnawed at the bones of those forced to endure it. Many died here, bodies dragged away before dawn, their names forgotten, their souls lingering in the darkness. Guards told stories of hearing footsteps pacing in empty corridors, the rattling of chains where no prisoner remained. One of the most notorious spirits is said to be that of a man named Goyo Cardenas, a convicted serial killer once imprisoned in Lecumberri. In life he was feared, but in death his presence is something worse. Inmates reported seeing a tall shadow standing outside their cell, watching, waiting. Some said they heard him whisper their names in the night, promising they would not leave alive. Others claimed that after his death, strange laughter echoed through the prison, bouncing from wall to wall, even when the prison was empty. But it is not just criminals who haunt Lecumberri. Political prisoners who were silenced within its walls are said to wander the corridors, their voices still crying out for justice. Some visitors swear they hear the faint sound of typewriters, the clatter of keys in rooms where men once wrote manifestos that never reached the outside world. Others say they see gaunt faces pressed against barred windows, staring out with hollow eyes, disappearing when approached. The building itself seems alive. Its corridors stretch endlessly, doors slamming shut with no hand to move them. The smell of mildew and old blood clings to the walls, even after years of renovation. Archivists working late at night report hearing the jangling of keys, the shuffle of boots marching across stone, and sometimes, low moans rising from the basement where solitary confinement once broke the minds of countless men. One of the darkest stories comes from those basements. There were cells so small, so suffocating, that men were left there for weeks, their sanity stripped away. Today, visitors who enter those spaces describe an oppressive weight pressing down on their chest. Some feel a hand clutching their arm, though no one is there. Others flee in panic, claiming they heard screams, muffled and distant, as though the prisoners are still begging for release. And then there are the lights. Staff who guard the archives say that long after everyone has left, they see lanterns moving down the halls, flickering and swaying, only to vanish when followed. Sometimes, rooms that were dark moments before glow with a strange illumination, as if someone has just walked in. The air grows colder, and the silence becomes unbearable, broken only by the faint rattle of chains dragging across the floor. The Palacio de Lecumberri was finally closed as a prison in 1976, its cells emptied, its gates sealed. Yet, closing the doors did not silence the voices. Those who walk its grounds at night say the building still breathes, still remembers. The walls are soaked in fear and rage, and the spirits of the forgotten refuse to rest. Now it is the home of history, shelves of documents stretching endlessly where once prisoners rotted. But beneath the ink and paper, the past is alive. Archivists say they sometimes hear prisoners whispering between the stacks, their voices echoing across centuries, asking for freedom they will never know. If you ever enter the Black Palace, do not wander alone. The building has eyes and its shadows have hands. Every footstep will follow you, every corridor will seem too long, and every whisper in the darkness may not belong to the living. You may think you are reading history, but in Lecumberri, history may be reading you. Number 4. La Posada del Sol, Mexico City. In the heart of Mexico City, hidden among crowded streets and fading memories, stands a place of eerie silence and crumbling beauty. La Posada del Sol, a once grand hotel, has become one of the city's darkest mysteries. Built in the 1940s by businessman Fernando Saldana Galvan, the hotel was meant to be a palace of luxury, a marvel of architecture, and a symbol of power. Instead, it became a monument of tragedy, despair, and restless spirits. From the outside, its faded facade still hints at the elegance it once carried, with sweeping arches, intricate stonework, and courtyards that were meant to welcome the wealthy. But when you step inside, the grandeur is gone. Empty halls stretch into the dark, rooms collapse into shadows, and walls are marked with graffiti and stains that never seem to fade. The air is heavy, thick with a presence that lingers, as if the building itself has not forgotten the suffering it has witnessed. The story begins with its creator. Galvan poured his fortune, his life, and his soul into La Posada del Sol. But the project quickly turned into ruin. Financial collapse, corruption, and endless setbacks drained him of everything. Overwhelmed by failure, he is said to have ended his life within the very walls of the hotel. Some say his spirit still roams the corridors, a broken man wandering the ruins of his shattered dream, his footsteps echoing at night when no one else is there. But Galvan is not alone. La Posada del Sol became more than an unfinished monument, it became a playground for darkness. The abandoned halls drew criminals, cults, and the desperate. Rituals were said to have been performed in the decaying ballrooms. Candles melted into the stone, strange symbols painted across the walls, and offerings left behind spoke of invocations best left unnamed. Visitors often report sudden drops in temperature, whispers that rise from empty rooms, and shadows that dart across the floor before vanishing into corners. One of the most chilling stories centers on a small shrine deep inside the hotel. It is said to be dedicated to the spirit of a little girl whose remains were discovered there. No one knows who she was or how she came to such a tragic end, but her presence is strong. The shrine is often covered with toys, candies, and flowers left by those who feel her sorrow. Yet, many who stand before it say they feel her eyes watching them. Some hear the sound of a child giggling in the distance, followed by soft footsteps running down the hall. Others claim to see her fleeting figure, a small shadow slipping just out of sight. Explorers who dare to enter after dark often leave in fear. Cameras malfunction, batteries drain, and the silence is broken by sudden, deafening sounds, doors slamming, glass shattering, footsteps racing overhead. Some have said they felt hands tugging at their clothes, pulling them deeper into the maze of corridors. Others report voices whispering in their ear, cold breath on the back of their neck, and an overwhelming sensation of being surrounded by countless unseen eyes. La Posada del Sol has stood abandoned for decades, its ruins slowly swallowed by time, yet it refuses to die. The spirits within are bound to its crumbling walls, prisoners of unfinished stories, of rituals, of tragedy. Those who enter say the building itself feels alive, waiting, hungry, drawing in the curious only to leave them with nightmares that follow for years. And while the legend of La Posada del Sol may terrify, it is only one of many places in Mexico where the dead refuse to sleep. For if you think the ruin of a hotel is unsettling, wait until you hear of a house where blood was spilled, where screams never stopped echoing, and where shadows crawl across the walls long after midnight. Number 5. Templo Mayor Ruins, Mexico City. Beneath the modern heartbeat of Mexico City lies a place where the ground itself remembers blood, fire, and sacrifice. The Templo Mayor ruins, once the sacred heart of the Aztec Empire, are not just stones and ancient carvings. They are an open wound of history, where thousands of lives were taken in rituals meant to feed the gods, where screams once filled the night air, and where restless spirits are said to remain even now. The ruins rest in the shadow of the Grand Cathedral in the city's Zocalo, a reminder that conquest and faith once clashed here. Centuries ago, this was the most sacred place in Tenochtitlan, the towering double pyramid dedicated to Huitzilopochtli, god of war, and Tlaloc, god of rain. Here, priests climbed the steep steps with obsidian knives, and countless captives were laid upon the stone altars. Their hearts were cut out, still beating, offered to the gods, their blood flowing down the pyramid stairs. This was not just religion, it was power, it was terror, and it left a mark that time has never erased. Today the ruins are silent but not empty. Visitors walking among the crumbling stones often speak of sensations that defy explanation. A sudden chill under the blazing sun, whispers carried by a wind that has no source, shadows moving where no one is standing. Guides and archaeologists have admitted that even in daylight, there are places within the ruins where they refuse to linger. The night brings darker things. Some claim to see the faint outline of priests moving along the steps, their obsidian blades glinting in ghostly light. Others hear the low beating of drums, steady, rhythmic, rising and falling like the pulse of the earth itself. There are stories of phantom flames appearing in the air, dancing and vanishing as quickly as they came, and of figures kneeling in prayer, their forms dissolving into smoke when approached. One of the most unsettling tales comes from security guards who patrol the site after dark. They tell of hearing wailing cries, not just of men but of women and children. Some have even reported seeing full apparitions of sacrificial victims, bound in ropes, eyes wide in terror, disappearing into the stones as if history itself were replaying in front of them. There are accounts of a woman dressed in white, believed to be connected to the legend of La Llorona, drifting silently through the ruins, her presence overlapping with the countless spirits who perished here. Some say the land is cursed, that the very foundation of the city rests on a place where gods still hunger. Archaeologists have uncovered skull racks, altars and ritual objects soaked in the weight of death. Each discovery seems to stir something deeper, as if uncovering the past wakes the spirits who were never given peace. Tourists who pocket small stones from the site often report nightmares, illnesses and unshakable feelings of dread until the objects are returned. The Templo Mayor is more than history. It is a graveyard of thousands. A place where faith and fear met in the spilling of blood. A place where the line between the living and the dead has grown thin. When you walk among its ruins, you are not just stepping through an archaeological site. You are walking across centuries of suffering, across the very ground where the Aztecs believed the gods themselves touched the earth. And the echoes of those ancient voices still call out, long after the city has changed around them. But while the Templo Mayor holds the whispers of ancient sacrifice, Mexico's haunted places are not all ancient. Some are far more recent, built in modern times, yet carrying the same weight of sorrow and restless spirits. And one such place is a house where tragedy left behind something that refuses to die. Number 6. The Catacombs of Guanajuato, Guanajuato. Beneath the vibrant streets of Guanajuato, with their colorful houses and lively plazas, there lies another city, one carved into the earth, dark, suffocating, and filled with whispers of the dead. The Catacombs of Guanajuato are not simply underground passageways, they are tombs, corridors of silence, and chambers where the air itself feels heavy with sorrow. The tunnels were originally dug to help control flooding, but as centuries passed they became something more, a resting place for the countless dead of Guanajuato. These catacombs are said to stretch endlessly, twisting beneath the city like veins under skin, hiding secrets that even locals do not dare explore after nightfall. The deeper you go, the colder the air becomes, and the more oppressive the silence feels, broken only by the drip of unseen water or the scurrying of rats. Legends claim that spirits wander these tunnels, drawn to the darkness, trapped in the labyrinth of stone. Visitors tell of sudden footsteps echoing behind them, though the corridors are empty. Some hear faint whispers in Spanish, begging for help, or prayers repeated over and over, as if the souls buried there never stopped pleading for peace. There are those who speak of shadows that move against the walls, flickering like candlelight, though no flame burns in the pitch black. Perhaps the most disturbing stories come from those who claim to have seen entire figures, pale, translucent, stumbling through the tunnels like the dead still trying to find their way out. The atmosphere is said to grow suffocating when these apparitions appear, a pressure on the chest, a weight that makes breathing nearly impossible. Some explorers have turned back after feeling icy hands brush against their shoulders, only to find nothing but empty air behind them. Locals whisper that the catacombs are not just filled with restless spirits, but also with something older, something darker, tied to ancient rituals and curses buried beneath Guanajuato's colonial history. Strange symbols carved into the walls hint at practices no one wants to speak of, and offerings found hidden in corners suggest that some still leave gifts to whatever lurks in the tunnels, hoping to appease it. The catacombs gained even more infamy because of the nearby mummies of Guanajuato, bodies eerily preserved and displayed in glass cases above ground. It is said that the spirits of those mummified corpses do not rest quietly, that some roam the tunnels below, their faces twisted in the same expressions of pain and terror they wore in death. Guards and workers have sworn that at night the museum grows alive with footsteps and banging sounds, as if the mummies themselves stir when the sun goes down. Visitors who dare venture into the tunnels often come out pale and shaken, claiming that something followed them back, something they can still feel in their homes. Some report nightmares of being trapped underground, buried alive, or chased by faceless figures through endless passages. Others say they hear scratching at their windows at night, as if something from the catacombs found its way to the surface. The catacombs of Guanajuato are more than tunnels, they are a maze of death, a place where time has folded in on itself, trapping the cries of centuries. To walk there is to feel the weight of thousands of souls pressing in from the darkness. And while the streets above are alive with music and light, beneath them lies a silent world of the dead, waiting, watching, whispering to those who dare disturb their eternal rest. Number 7. La Casa de los Perros, Guadalajara. In the heart of Guadalajara stands a mansion that looks beautiful from the outside, yet whispers of terror cling to its walls. This is La Casa de los Perros, the House of the Dogs, named after the 2 stone canines that guard its entrance. The dogs are not just decoration, locals say they are guardians, protecting the house from whatever lurks inside, or perhaps keeping something trapped within its walls. The house was built in the 19th century by Jesus Flores, a wealthy man who fell deeply in love with a young woman named Ana Gonzalez. It is said he adored her, so much so that he promised to leave her his fortune and the house if he died first. True to his word, when Flores passed away, Ana inherited the grand home. But love soon turned to despair. She remarried, and with her new husband she entered the mansion, only for tragedy to strike again. The story tells that the couple was attacked inside the house. The husband was murdered, and Ana herself was brutally assaulted. After her death, whispers began, claiming her spirit never left the mansion. Some say she roams the halls, dressed in black, her face hidden, forever mourning the cruelty she suffered. Others say she appears in mirrors, her pale face emerging just behind yours, staring with hollow eyes before vanishing. The mansion is now a cultural institution, but workers and visitors still report encounters that send shivers down their spine. The sounds of footsteps echo across empty corridors, doors slam shut with violent force, and whispers rise out of nowhere. At night, a woman's cries are heard, soft at first, then growing louder, almost unbearable, until they fade into silence. Those who dare to stay past midnight tell of icy winds rushing through rooms with no open windows, or of objects shifting on their own, as if unseen hands were moving them. But the strangest tale belongs to the stone dogs themselves. According to legend, when a thief once tried to enter the house, the statues sprang to life, attacking him, tearing at his flesh until he died. Since then, locals believe the dogs are cursed protectors, their stone eyes watching all who pass, waiting for the next intruder to challenge their power. Some people swear that, on certain nights, the dogs' heads turn slightly as if following them, their stone jaws twitching like they are ready to bite. Even more disturbing, psychics and paranormal investigators claim that the house is not just haunted by Anna, but by something darker. They describe a malevolent force lingering in the basement, where the air is suffocating and shadows move against the walls. People report feeling watched, their bodies growing heavy as if something is pressing down on them. Some leave the basement trembling, refusing to ever return. For Guadalajara, La Casa de los Perros is more than a haunted mansion. It is a story of love turned into tragedy, of betrayal and restless spirits. It is a place where grief echoes in every corner, where guardians of stone may truly be alive, and where the veil between the living and the dead is dangerously thin. Number 8. Panteón de Bullen Cemetery, Guadalajara. Few cemeteries in Mexico carry as much dread as the Panteón de Bullen in Guadalajara. Built in the mid-19th century, this sprawling burial ground was designed as the final resting place for some of the city's most important families. Its architecture is striking, with mausoleums and crypts carved in stone, tall cypress trees reaching into the sky, and narrow paths that twist through rows of graves. Yet behind its beauty lies a chilling reputation. Locals whisper that this cemetery is alive with restless spirits, each corner holding a different tale of terror. One of the most famous legends is the story of El Vampiro de Guadalajara, the vampire of Guadalajara. The tale begins with a strange man who moved into the city during the 1800s. Pale, gaunt, and rarely seen during the day, he was feared by locals. Soon livestock began to die, drained of blood, and eventually even children were found lifeless, with puncture marks on their necks. The townspeople grew convinced that the stranger was a vampire. One night, a mob gathered, hunted him down, and drove a wooden stake through his heart. He was buried in Panteón de Bullen, but legend says the tree that grew from his grave is proof that he still lives. The tree's roots are said to have pushed the stake out of his chest, freeing him. Even today, the massive tree still stands, twisting and stretching across the grave, and locals believe that if it is ever cut down, the vampire will rise again. Another terrifying tale is that of the monk's ghost. Visitors have reported seeing a hooded figure wandering the cemetery at night, gliding silently between the tombstones. Some say he appears only to those with heavy sins, staring at them with hollow eyes before vanishing. People who encounter him claim they feel an overwhelming sense of dread, as if their secrets are being pulled out into the open. Children's cries are also heard here. According to one story, a young boy died after falling ill, and his grieving mother visited his grave every night. Even after her death, the sound of a child weeping can be heard echoing among the tombs, sometimes followed by the faint image of a small figure kneeling by the graves. The cemetery also holds stories of mass burials, as it served during outbreaks of disease. Many bodies were interred hastily, without proper rituals, their souls said to wander endlessly, confused and angry. Visitors describe feeling cold hands brushing against their arms, whispers in their ears, or the sensation of being followed, though no one is there. At night, the Panteón de Bullen transforms into something almost unbearable. Tour guides who lead night walks through the cemetery admit that even they fear certain parts. Strange lights dance between the graves, shadows stretch unnaturally, and some claim to see figures standing at the far end of a path, only for them to vanish when approached. The silence is heavy, broken only by the occasional sound of scraping stone or a distant cry that chills the blood. Locals believe the cemetery is a place where the boundary between life and death is almost non-existent, where every spirit lingers just a breath away from the living. For many in Guadalajara, Panteón de Bullen is not just a graveyard, it is a city of ghosts, a realm of the forgotten, and a reminder that the dead never truly rest. Number 9. La Casa de la Tía Tana, Chapultepec Forest. Deep within the sprawling green lungs of Mexico City lies Chapultepec Forest, a place of beauty during the day but home to one of the darkest legends at night. Hidden among the trees is a crumbling, abandoned house known to everyone as La Casa de la Tía Tana, the House of Aunt Tana. From the outside it seems like nothing more than a forgotten ruin, its windows shattered, its walls stained with time, and its roof half collapsed under years of neglect. But to those who dare to step closer, the air grows heavier, the silence more suffocating, and the forest itself seems to lean in as if warning intruders to turn back. For within this house, the story goes, the spirit of Aunt Tana still roams, bitter, restless, and angry. The tale of Aunt Tana is one that parents once whispered to their children as both a caution and a warning. According to legend, she was once a wealthy woman who lived alone in her large home. Lonely and isolated, she dedicated herself to helping poor and abandoned children, taking them into her house, feeding them, clothing them, and trying to provide a life of safety. But over time, her kindness became twisted. The children, it is said, were noisy and mischievous, and Aunt Tana grew cruel and impatient. One night, overwhelmed with rage, she gathered them and led them deep into the forest. There, some say she threw them into the river to drown, others say she locked them in her house and left them to die. Whatever the truth may be, none of the children were ever seen again, and Aunt Tana herself vanished soon after. From that day forward, her home was said to be cursed. Visitors who venture into the Chapultepec forest at night claim they can hear the voices of children crying, echoing faintly through the trees, their laughter turning to screams as it draws closer. The house itself radiates an oppressive energy. Those who enter describe sudden chills, an unbearable sense of being watched, and most disturbingly, the unmistakable presence of someone following them from room to room. Eyewitness accounts speak of shadowy figures darting in the corners of vision, of small handprints appearing on dusty glass, and of doors that slam shut violently even when no wind stirs the forest. Some visitors claim to have seen Aunt Tana herself, a frail old woman in a tattered shawl, her face hidden in shadow. She is said to glare at intruders with eyes full of fury, as if punishing those who disturb her restless wandering. Others insist they have felt her cold fingers brush against their skin, or worse, heard her whisper their names in the dark. One of the most terrifying legends says that those who mock the story or show disrespect near the house never return. Their bodies are not found, only the echoes of their cries in the forest. It is believed that Aunt Tana traps their souls, adding them to the countless children who still roam the halls of her decaying home. Tourists who entered the ruins and left alive have sworn that the walls are covered in strange markings, like claw scratches, and that the floors sometimes rumble faintly as if the house itself is alive. Even those who never step inside feel the presence. Hikers report losing their way around Chapultepec Forest, their compasses spinning wildly, their phones failing, and an unnatural fog descending without warning. In that fog, figures appear, sometimes children holding hands, sometimes a solitary old woman watching silently before fading into the mist. These stories repeat so often that even locals who grew up near the forest avoid the area entirely after sundown. By day, Chapultepec is a lively park filled with laughter, vendors, and families enjoying the sun. But by night, the forest changes. The paths grow darker than they should, the trees seem to close in, and every sound carries a menace. Dogs bark into the empty woods, refusing to step forward, as if they sense something the human eye cannot see. And at the heart of it all, hidden and crumbling, waits La Casa de la Tia Tana. The house is more than just a ruin, it is a scar, a place where the line between kindness and cruelty blurred so violently that the echoes of suffering never faded. Many paranormal investigators have tried to uncover the truth. Some leave with chilling recordings, children's laughter caught on tape where no children exist. Others return with photographs of strange orbs, shadow figures, or the silhouette of an old woman glaring from a window that should have been empty. Still, no one dares stay too long. Everyone who enters speaks of the same thing, an overwhelming urge to flee, as though the house itself is pushing them out, yet at the same time daring them to come closer, to step further into its darkness. La Casa de la Tia Tana remains one of Mexico's most enduring ghost stories. It is not just the ruin of a home, it is a place where tragedy and horror fuse together, leaving behind a mark that cannot be erased. Some say Aunt Tana was a woman cursed by her own choices, others claim she was a victim of slander and her ghost lingers in fury at being misunderstood. But no matter what the truth is, the house still waits in silence, deep in Chapultepec Forest, daring the living to step inside and discover the nightmares within. From this haunted home in the forest, our journey leads us onward, to yet another place where the veil between life and death grows thin, and where history itself refuses to sleep. Number 10. Hotel Posada del Hidalgo, El Fuerte, Sinaloa. In the colonial town of El Fuerte stands a hotel with walls of stone and corridors lined with arches, a place that welcomes guests with charm by day but reveals a darker truth when the night takes hold. This is the Hotel Posada del Hidalgo, a building whose beauty hides the presence of a restless spirit that has haunted its rooms for generations. Travelers come seeking luxury, yet many leave with trembling voices, their eyes wide from encounters with the ghost of a woman who will not rest. The story begins centuries ago, when the mansion that is now the hotel was the home of a wealthy family. Among the servants was a young woman of extraordinary beauty, known in whispers as La Dona de la Noche, the Lady of the Night. Some say she was kept hidden by her wealthy lover, who feared the gossip her presence would bring. Others claim she was betrayed, cast aside, and left broken-hearted. Her end is cloaked in mystery, but one truth echoes through time: she died in sorrow within these walls, and her spirit has remained ever since. Guests who stay at the hotel often describe an unease that grows stronger after dusk. In certain rooms, mirrors seem to ripple like water when no one moves. Doors creak open and shut with no draft to stir them. The scent of roses, faint and sweet, fills the hallways though no flowers are present. And then there are the sightings. Men claim to see her most often: a woman dressed in white, with long dark hair flowing over her shoulders, gliding silently across the tiled floors. She appears at the foot of the bed, her eyes heavy with sorrow, her gaze piercing as though she is searching for someone she lost long ago. Sometimes she lingers in the courtyards, her figure drifting past the fountains, disappearing when approached. At other times she is seen on the balconies, staring into the night as if waiting for a lover who never returned. Hotel staff speak in hushed tones about their encounters. A maid once entered a room to clean, only to find a woman standing by the window. When she greeted her, the woman turned slowly, her face pale and her eyes empty, and then dissolved into thin air. A receptionist recalls hearing footsteps pacing the lobby long after everyone had gone to bed, the sound of high heels striking the tiles, though when he looked, the lobby was empty. Chefs in the kitchen report dishes falling from shelves with no cause, as if unseen hands grew impatient. Perhaps the most chilling encounters come from those who wake in the middle of the night to find her seated in a chair beside their bed, watching in silence. Her form is solid, her presence undeniable, until she fades away into shadow, leaving only the lingering scent of roses. Some guests check out the next morning, unable to bear another night under her gaze. Locals believe that La Donna de la Noche cannot rest because her love story ended in betrayal. Some say her lover abandoned her. Others whisper that she was murdered to protect the reputation of a powerful family. Whatever the truth, the sorrow of her end clings to the hotel, turning its beauty into a stage for her eternal wandering. Even skeptics find it hard to ignore the weight of the atmosphere inside Posada del Hidalgo. The air grows thick in the hallways, silence presses heavily against the ears, and shadows seem to linger longer than they should. Paranormal investigators have captured strange photographs: glowing orbs near mirrors, distorted faces in windows, and cold spots that freeze the skin in an instant. Recordings reveal faint sobs, a woman's voice humming a lullaby, and whispers that call out names no one present has spoken. Yet for all the fear, there is also sadness in her haunting. Guests who have seen her up close describe a profound loneliness in her expression, as if she longs not to terrify but simply to be seen, to be remembered, to have her story told. The hotel thrives on its charm and elegance, but behind the laughter of tourists and the clinking of glasses, the lady of the night still walks, her sorrow binding her to the place that witnessed her heartbreak. Step into Hotel Posada del Hidalgo and you step into more than just a luxury inn, you step into a story of love, betrayal, and death, one that refuses to fade even as centuries pass. The lady of the night will be there, waiting in silence, watching from the shadows, reminding every guest that some spirits never check out. And from this haunted hotel in Sinaloa, our journey through Mexico's ghostly past does not end, it only deepens, leading us further into places where history and the supernatural are forever entwined. Number 11. Hacienda del Terror, Chihuahua. In the arid lands of Chihuahua stands a crumbling estate that locals dare not approach after dark. Its very name sends shivers through those who speak it, the Hacienda del Terror. By day, it is nothing more than ruins, walls of adobe and stone eaten away by time, arches collapsed into dust, and weeds crawling through what were once elegant courtyards. Yet when the sun falls and the desert winds whisper across the land, the hacienda awakens, and the echoes of its bloody past return to torment the living. The story of the Hacienda del Terror begins in the 19th century, when it was the stronghold of a ruthless landowner. His cruelty was legendary. Peasants were forced into endless labor, children were beaten for the smallest mistakes, and women whispered prayers under their breath whenever he entered a room. His punishments were brutal, his temper uncontrollable, and over the years the hacienda became a prison for all who lived within its walls. Many never left alive. It is said that one night the workers finally rose up against their master. Flames engulfed the estate, cries pierced the air, and the tyrant himself was dragged into the courtyard and met a violent end. His blood seeped into the soil, mixing with the ash and smoke of the burning hacienda. But instead of peace, what followed was a curse. Those who died in rage and despair did not leave, their spirits clung to the ruins, and the land became a place of shadows and restless souls. Visitors who dare to enter after sunset speak of overwhelming dread. The temperature drops suddenly, Breath turns to mist even in the desert heat, and footsteps echo across empty corridors. Some hear the sound of chains dragging across the stone, followed by anguished cries as if the peasants are still enslaved, reliving their torment over and over. Others report seeing a dark figure, tall and broad, his face twisted with fury, believed to be the cruel master who refuses to surrender his domain. Phantom horses are said to charge through the fields, hooves pounding, though no animal is ever seen. In the chapel ruins, prayers are whispered in the dark, not in the voice of the living but in tones that tremble with despair. Those who enter with flashlights find their beams flickering, swallowed by a darkness that feels alive. One of the most terrifying stories comes from a group of travelers who decided to camp within the hacienda walls. At midnight, they awoke to the sound of footsteps circling their tent. The air grew unbearably heavy, the smell of smoke and blood filled their nostrils, and then a shadow fell across the canvas. When one man dared to unzip the tent, he saw dozens of figures standing in the courtyard, faces burned, eyes hollow, mouths opening in silent screams. The group fled into the desert, never to return. Locals claim that the hacienda is cursed ground, and those who stay too long risk being claimed by the spirits. Farmers refuse to graze their animals nearby, for they say the livestock panic and refuse to eat. Children are warned never to play near the ruins, and at night no villager dares to pass along the road that runs beside the hacienda. Some even say that the cries of the murdered workers can be heard carried on the desert wind, rising with the howls of coyotes in the distance. The Hacienda del Terror is not just a ruin, it is a wound carved into the land, a scar of cruelty and rebellion, where the living and the dead are forever entangled. Step inside its walls and you may find yourself surrounded by shadows that never left, by screams that never stopped, by a master who refuses to release his grip, and by the restless souls of those who died in despair. And as we leave behind the cursed ruins of Chihuahua, the road ahead takes us even deeper into Mexico's haunted heart, where other places of sorrow and darkness wait to reveal their stories. Number 12, Callejón del Beso, Guanajuato. In the city of Guanajuato, where the hills rise like waves of stone and the houses cling to one another in bright colors, there is a place so narrow and so intimate that two people can lean across its gap and kiss. It is called Callejón del Beso, the Alley of the Kiss. To the tourist it is charming, painted with stories of love. But to those who live here, to those who know what happened centuries ago, the alley is not simply a place of romance. It is a place where tragedy hardened into legend, and where the walls themselves seem to breathe with sorrow and rage. The story begins with a young woman named Ana, the daughter of a wealthy merchant who lived in the city during the colonial days. Ana was beautiful, with dark hair and eyes that seemed to hold secrets. But her beauty was a curse, for her father treated her not as a person but as property. He watched her closely, arranged her future without her consent, and demanded obedience in all things. Ana's heart, however, belonged elsewhere. She had met a young man named Carlos, a miner with calloused hands and a smile that softened her world. Though they came from different classes, their hearts found one another. The city of Guanajuato was filled with narrow alleys and secret passages, and it was in one of these twisting paths that Ana and Carlos discovered their chance. Across from Ana's window stood a small house, its balcony facing hers. Carlos rented a room there, and the space between the balconies was so thin that their hands could touch across the gap, their lips could meet in stolen moments. 4 weeks they lived in this fragile paradise. At night, when her father was asleep, Ana would slip onto the balcony and Carlos would be waiting. They whispered promises, dreams of escape, vows of eternal love. The alley below them remained silent, a witness to their secret passion. It seemed that nothing could tear them apart. But fate is merciless. One night Ana's father discovered her secret. Some say a servant betrayed her. Others claim he simply suspected and followed her movements. Whatever the truth, the outcome was brutal. He stormed into Ana's room, caught her at the balcony, and in a fit of fury struck her with a dagger. Carlos, standing only a breath away across the alley, watched in horror as she collapsed. He reached for her, leaning across the gap, but her body slipped from his arms, blood staining the stones. Her last breath left her lips before she could say goodbye. That was the night the Callejón del Beso changed forever. They say Ana never left. Her spirit clings to the balcony, bound to the place where her love ended. Visitors tell of seeing her shadow standing at the railing, her face pale, her dress dark with blood. Couples who kiss at the spot sometimes feel a cold hand pressing against their backs, as though someone else is forcing them closer, reminding them of the kiss Ana was denied. At times her sobs echo through the alley, faint but sharp enough to freeze the heart. But Ana is not the only spirit here. Some claim her father's presence lingers too. His rage was so fierce that it carved itself into the stones. People walking through late at night describe the sound of heavy footsteps, a man pacing in anger. Others say they have seen a dark figure standing in the window of Anna's old room, watching with eyes filled with hatred. The air grows heavy when he is near, and the scent of iron, like fresh blood, hangs in the narrow passage. The alley has become both a place of pilgrimage and of fear. Lovers flock here to kiss on the third step of the stairs, for legend says that couples who kiss there are guaranteed 7 years of happiness. Yet others whisper that mocking the story brings misfortune. There is a tale of 2 lovers who laughed at the warnings. They kissed but scoffed at the legend, joking about Anna's fate. Within a week, tragedy struck. One was injured in an accident, the other fell gravely ill. Locals nodded grimly, saying Anna's spirit does not forgive disrespect. Another account tells of a tourist who decided to stay behind after the crowds left. He lingered at midnight, camera in hand, hoping to catch proof of ghosts. What he captured instead was terror. In his photographs, the balcony showed not only Anna's pale figure but another shape, larger, darker, standing just behind her. The next morning, when the man checked out of his hotel, he left the city in silence, refusing to speak of what he had seen. He abandoned his camera, and when the images were developed, the dark figure had moved closer in every shot. The Callahan is not just haunted by its legend, it is alive with it. The walls whisper at night. The balconies creak as though someone unseen steps upon them. The air grows cold without warning, wrapping around those who dare to linger. And sometimes if you stand too close, you may feel a hand brushing against yours, or a whisper in your ear, a voice repeating vows never fulfilled. Even the locals who pass through every day avoid the alley after dark. They tell their children to hurry home before night falls. They warn that spirits, once bound to a place of passion and death, do not rest. The Callahan del Beso is not simply a street. It is a memory carved into stone. It is a wound that bleeds in silence. To walk there is to step into a story that never ended, to stand between love and rage, to feel the presence of Anna and her father battling still. And though the alley glows with romance during daylight, when the lamps cast their dim light at night, the truth emerges. Love and death live side by side here, forever bound in the narrow breadth of space between 2 balconies. And as we leave this cursed passage in Guanajuato, the echoes of Anna's last kiss follow behind. Yet our journey through Mexico's haunted places is not finished. Ahead lies another location where grief, shadows, and restless spirits cling just as fiercely to the earth. Number 13. The haunted convent of Culiacan, Sinaloa. In the heart of Culiacan there once stood a convent that promised devotion, silence, and purity. Its walls were high, its windows narrow, and its halls echoing with the footsteps of nuns who had dedicated their lives to prayer. From the outside the convent looked serene. But those who entered soon discovered that within its cloisters lingered shadows, grief, and whispers that belonged not to the living but to those who had never left. The convent was founded in the colonial era, when the church held immense power across Mexico. Young women were often sent there not out of spiritual calling but because their families demanded it. Some were placed behind its walls for disobedience. Others were forced there as punishment for falling in love with men their families disapproved of. These women carried sorrow into the convent, and over the years sorrow became part of its foundation. One story is told of a young novice who was locked away for breaking her vows. She had confessed to loving a soldier who promised to return for her. When her secret was discovered, the other sisters turned against her, believing she had brought shame upon their order. They confined her to a small cell with no window, a place where light could not enter. For weeks she prayed for mercy but the door never opened. She died within those stone walls, her spirit broken, her final breath spent in silence. Some say the cell still stands, sealed shut, and at night the sound of her sobbing seeps through the cracks. Another tale speaks of a mother superior whose discipline was so harsh that even death did not release her. She demanded obedience in life, and in death she is said to stalk the halls, her rosary beads clicking against the walls, her shadow gliding past the doors of the dormitories. Visitors who wander the ruins today often report the sensation of being watched. Some claim to feel a presence walking just behind them, cold breath against their necks, as though the old mother still inspects her charges. The convent's chapel is perhaps the most haunted of all. Locals say that candles ignite on their own, filling the air with smoke though no flame is present. The pews creak as if unseen bodies shift in them, kneeling and rising in prayer. On certain nights, a mass is said to be conducted by spirits alone, with chanting so low and mournful that it chills the blood. No priest stands at the altar, yet the sound of Latin prayers carries through the nave. But the most disturbing reports come from those who pass by at midnight. They say the windows glow faintly as if lit by lanterns from long ago. Pale faces press against the glass, staring outward with hollow eyes. Some recognize them as nuns, their habits still upon them, though their expressions are twisted in despair. Others see something darker, faces that are human yet not, shadows that shift unnaturally, gazes that pierce through flesh and bone. There are whispers of secret rooms beneath the convent. During renovations, workers uncovered tunnels leading to hidden chambers. Within them they found bones, small skeletons and fragments of rosaries. The discovery was quickly hushed, but those who entered the chambers say the atmosphere was unbearable. The air grew heavy, the walls seemed to breathe, and one worker swore he heard chanting in a language he did not know. He fled the site and never returned, warning others never to disturb what lay buried. Even now, the people of Culiacan avoid the convent after dark. The building stands silent, abandoned by time, yet alive with presence. Dogs refuse to go near it, their bodies trembling, their howls piercing the night. Children dare one another to step onto the grounds, but none stay long. They all speak of the same thing, a sudden drop in temperature, a whisper in the ear, and the sound of bare feet moving across the stones. The haunted convent of Culiacan is more than a relic of faith. It is a tomb of broken vows, a prison of sorrow, a monument to those who were silenced. Its walls have absorbed centuries of grief, and they release it at night in voices, shadows, and apparitions. To walk its halls is to feel the weight of lives lost, to hear the prayers of the damned, and to sense that the line between devotion and despair is far thinner than we wish to believe. And as we leave the convent behind, the echoes of chants and sobs seem to follow. But our path through Mexico's haunted places does not end here. Another destination waits, one that carries its own history of terror, where spirits cling just as fiercely to the earth and refuse to let go. Number 14. La Llorona along Lake Xochimilco, Mexico City. Few legends in Mexico are as powerful and as feared as the tale of La Llorona, the weeping woman. Along the dark waters of Lake Xochimilco, her story is not just told, it is lived. When night falls and the canals grow silent, boatmen and travelers claim the sound of her cries drifts across the water. The wail is unmistakable, drawn out and piercing, the lament of a mother forever searching for her lost children. The legend begins centuries ago. A woman betrayed by the man she loved, consumed by rage and sorrow, drowned her children in the river. Realizing the horror of what she had done, she threw herself into the same waters, her final breath swallowed by the current. Yet death did not free her. Her spirit rose, condemned to wander the rivers, lakes and canals of Mexico, forever searching, forever weeping, forever terrifying those unlucky enough to hear her voice. At Lake Xochimilco, the legend has a life of its own. Locals say the canals are her chosen path, a labyrinth of black waters where she appears most often. Many Chinampa farmers who tend their floating gardens in the early morning hours tell stories of encountering her pale figure drifting along the banks. They see a woman in white, her hair long and tangled, her face hidden, her steps leaving no ripples on the water's surface. When they look closer, she vanishes, leaving only the sound of her sobs echoing through the reeds. Boatmen who ferry visitors through the canals speak of sudden chills that sweep over their trajineras, as though icy hands graze their skin. Some report hearing splashes behind them, as if someone has fallen into the water, only to find the lake empty. Others swear they have seen her rise from the surface itself, her hands clawing upward, her face contorted with grief, her wails so loud they drown out every other sound. Children are warned not to wander too close to the lake at night. The weeping woman is said to mistake the living for her own drowned children. Those who hear her cry too closely are said to be marked. The sound comes in two ways. If you hear her wail far away, you are safe. But if her cry pierces the night right beside you, her spirit is near and danger is certain. There are stories of fishermen dragged beneath the waters after answering her cries. Men who claim to see her along the canals return days later, pale, weak, and unable to speak of what they had witnessed. In some cases they never returned at all. Families still tell of cousins, uncles, or neighbors who disappeared after a late-night encounter with La Llorona on the lake. During festivals and celebrations in Xochimilco, when music and laughter fill the air, some say her presence grows restless. Her cries rise above the sounds of mariachi, a ghostly hymn no one can ignore. Those who hear her often fall silent, glancing toward the canals, their joy replaced by unease. For even amidst life and celebration, her sorrow cuts through, a reminder that the lake belongs to her. There is one story often retold by boatmen, about a group of young friends who rented a triginera for a late-night ride. They brought music, food, and drink, laughing as they drifted deeper into the canal. Then the wind shifted. The air grew heavy and cold, and the sound of wailing carried across the water. At first they thought it was a trick, maybe another group trying to scare them. But then the boat rocked violently as if struck by unseen hands. One friend swore he saw a figure standing on the water itself, her dress trailing into the black lake. The group tried to flee, but the triginera moved sluggishly as if caught in weeds. When they finally reached shore, their faces were pale, their laughter gone, their night forever marked by the weeping woman. Even today, the legend of La Llorona remains alive in Mexico City, and nowhere more vividly than in Xochimilco. Tourists come for the floating gardens and colorful trigineras, but many leave speaking in hushed voices about what they felt on the water, a presence that chilled them, a sound they cannot forget. The weeping woman is not just a story here. She is real, her cries woven into the mist that rises from the canals at night. And so, as we drift away from Xochimilco, we carry her voice with us, her eternal cry ringing in our ears. But our journey is not yet over. One final haunted place awaits, a destination where the dead themselves are said to walk, and where the line between the living and the departed disappears entirely. Number 15. La Casa Negra, the Black House, Colonia Roma, Mexico City. In the heart of Mexico City's Colonia Roma district, surrounded by elegant homes, busy streets, and vibrant life, there stands a house unlike any other. Locals call it La Casa Negra, the Black House. Its walls are dark, its windows shuttered, and its presence is heavy, as though the building itself breathes with sorrow and anger. Even in daylight, the house seems to swallow the sun, casting a shadow that lingers too long, chilling anyone who passes by. Few dare to walk too close, and fewer still have ever stepped inside, for the stories that surround this house are darker than the paint on its walls. The Black House has been abandoned for decades, its history shrouded in whispers and half-remembered tales. They say the house was once owned by a wealthy doctor, a man respected in the community, until tragedy struck. A plague swept through the city, leaving behind death in every street, and the doctor opened his doors to treat the sick. The house became filled with bodies, both living and dying, its halls echoing with coughs and cries. Soon, every patient inside perished, and the doctor himself was found lifeless at his desk. From that day on, no family would live within its walls, and the house was left to rot. But abandonment did not bring peace. Neighbors began to report strange noises from within. Lights flickering in windows though no one lived there. The sound of footsteps pacing back and forth at night. Whispers carried out through broken shutters. Some even claimed to see shadows moving behind the curtains, dark figures that stood and stared out at the street, waiting for someone to notice them. The house earned its name not just from its darkened walls, but from the aura it gave off. People walking past would suddenly feel dizzy, as though the air itself grew heavy with death. Children dared each other to touch its gate, but many would run away screaming before their fingers met the cold iron. Animals refused to go near, dogs growling and pulling their owners across the street. The house seemed alive and it seemed angry. There are countless stories tied to the Black House. Some say that those who dared enter never came out. Others tell of a group of students who sneaked inside one night, hoping to prove their bravery. They laughed at the dust and cobwebs, until one of them swore he heard breathing behind him. Another said she saw a man in a doctor's coat standing at the end of the hallway, his eyes hollow, his face pale. They fled in terror, and though they escaped, each of them fell ill in the days that followed, feverish and weak, as though the plague of the past had touched them. Neighbors recall one rainy evening when lightning struck, illuminating the house for only a second. In that flash, figures were seen standing at every window, faces pressed against the glass, mouths open in silent screams. When the thunder faded, the house was empty again, but no one forgot what they had seen. Some refused to live anywhere near the house after that night, leaving their homes behind rather than risk crossing its shadow. The longer the Black House has been left untouched, the stronger the stories have grown. Some believe the souls of those who died during the plague are trapped inside, forever reliving their final moments. Others say the doctor himself cursed the building, binding his patients to it so he would never be alone in death. There are even rumors of darker rituals performed within its walls, of blood spilled not by disease but by human hands, sacrifices that left stains that no time can erase. Even today, passers-by swear the house watches them. They say its windows are not just glass but eyes following every step. At night, some claim they hear cries echoing down the street, the desperate moans of the dying, begging for help that never comes. Others report hearing a sharp knock from inside the house, as if someone or something is trying to be let out. Urban explorers sometimes boast about sneaking into the Black House, but most never follow through. Those who claim they have gone inside speak of hallways that seem longer than they should be, doors that slam shut on their own, and the overwhelming smell of decay, even though nothing has lived there for years. They describe the sensation of being watched not by one presence but by dozens, all pressing close, all reaching out, all waiting. The Black House remains one of the most feared places in Mexico City. Police refuse to patrol too close, and real estate agents do not list it for sale. It stands as a wound in the middle of the city, a place where the dead have claimed ownership, and the living are unwelcome. No matter how modern Colonia Roma becomes, no matter how brightly its streets shine with restaurants, galleries and music, the Black House sits in silence, its darkness untouched. And so, if you ever find yourself walking through Roma at night and you come across a house that seems too quiet, too still, with windows like black eyes staring out at you across the street, do not stop. Do not look too long. Because inside those walls, the doctor and his patients are waiting, and once you hear their whispers, once you feel their cold breath on your neck, you may never truly leave the Black House behind. You have walked with me through the darkest streets of Mexico, you have stood in the shadows of ancient temples, you have heard the whispers of haunted houses and followed the echoes of lost souls. From the island of the dolls where lifeless eyes stare endlessly, to the Black House in Colonia Roma where the walls breathe with death, you have stepped inside places where the living and the dead still cross paths. These are not just stories, these are experiences carried in the air of Mexico, stitched into its history and whispered through its legends. Every place we visited tonight holds memories that will never fade. La Isla de las Muñecas with its dolls that move when no one is watching. Hospital Juarez where patients still scream in the halls. The catacombs of Guanajuato where the dead line the walls in silence. And La Llorona who still wanders the waters of Xochimilco, her cries echoing in the darkness. Each one carries fear, sorrow, and a reminder that not every soul finds peace. But the question that lingers is this: what if these stories are not legends? What if the cries you hear in the night are real? What if the shadow at the end of the hall is not your imagination? What if the footsteps behind you belong to someone who never left this world? In Mexico, the veil between the living and the dead feels thinner, the line less certain, the presence stronger. Imagine yourself standing before La Casa Negra as the night falls. You hear the rain against its broken windows. You hear the faint coughs of patients long gone. You smell the stench of rot. Do you walk away or do you dare to step inside? Think about the Alley of the Kiss, where tragedy froze love forever. Couples walk through believing they are safe but the spirits still watch. If you kiss there, will you feel the cold hand of the dead brushing against your skin? Think of the convents, the cemeteries, the ruins where priests, soldiers and innocents still wander. They are not forgotten, they are waiting. Some call out for help, others call out for company, and some want revenge. And now, as we close this journey, I ask you, which of these haunted places would you dare to visit? Would you walk through the dolls of Xochimilco? Would you enter the Black House and face the doctor's curse? Would you wander the catacombs of Guanajuato with only a candle in your hand? If your answer is yes, remember this: the spirits may not always let you leave. As you try to sleep tonight, listen carefully. That sound in the corner of your room. That shadow by your window. That whisper in your ear when you are alone. Maybe, just maybe, you did not leave the haunted places behind. Maybe you carried something back with you. Mexico's ghosts are old and they are patient. They wait in forests, in rivers, in mansions, in alleys, in cemeteries. They do not care if you believe. They do not care if you laugh. They do not care if you run. They will still be there. Watching. Waiting. So the next time you hear the wind outside your window and it sounds like a woman crying. The next time you feel someone walking just behind you when the street is empty. The next time your reflection in the mirror does not quite move when you do. Remember this journey. Remember these places. And remember that Mexico's haunted stories are not just stories. They are warnings. Now, if you want more stories like this, make sure to stay with us. Subscribe for more haunted journeys, more chilling encounters, and more legends that will keep you awake long after midnight. Leave a comment telling me which haunted place you would dare to explore. Or tell me which one terrified you the most tonight. Share this with someone brave enough to watch it alone. This is not the end. The spirits do not rest. And neither will we. We will return with more haunted legends, more terrifying histories, more restless souls. Until then, keep your doors locked, keep your lights on, and if you hear a whisper calling your name tonight, do not answer. Because in Mexico, the dead are never far away. and sometimes they are closer than you think.